Well, good evening. My name's Dominic. We have started a little bit late this evening, just to allow some people who had some issues with parking to try to come and attend. I won't go into too much about me. You can read about me. I think there's a bit in the brochure that Shannon's very kindly put in. But we'll get through my part and we'll get on to the speakers. Timings this evening, we're going to try to get up to about 8 o'clock, 8:05, have an interval where there'll be some refreshments served. And then we'll begin again, hopefully by 9:45, 10:50, and I understand that the Mayor of Milton Keynes is going to join us as well, and he would like to say a few words, so that'll be very pleasant and interesting. We've got some thank yous to do now, because I always forget them at the end. So a big thank you to Shannon Huston and to Great Linford Parish Council for organising tonight's event. There's also some special thanks to Ruth Panther, and from Shannon as well, Stuart Olney and Julie Garner. You know who you are. Lastly, thank you to Southwood School for allowing us to use the venue. The running order tonight, which I've just gone through, so we should finish by 9:30, 9:45, depending on questions. The speakers, if I can ask that you, when each speaker comes up, they're going to talk about either their professional role and their experience within their professional role, or some very sort of personal accounts. If we can hold questions to when they've finished, and then we've got sort of 5 minutes at the end for each speaker to ask a couple of questions. If you don't want to put your hand up and ask any questions at that point, you can grab them during the interval and have a chat. They'll be roaming around front of the line for the coffee. And then at the end again, if you do have any questions and you don't want to speak to anyone here and you've got to rush off, there's going to be an email address we'll leave you with and some contact details that if you think about something on the way home that you want to ask, there'll be an email address we can give you where you can fire that off. Okay. So what's this evening going to be about then? Well, it's not going to be about Brexit. Thank God for that. Although I did ask Shannon if I could have Labour's on one side and Remainers on the other, just to see if that spice things up. She said no. So what the evening is going to be about is about raising awareness of young people's mental health. And 2 reasons we're doing that is to begin to erode the stigma around mental health and talking about mental health, and also raise awareness of some of the challenges experienced when working with young people who have mental health challenges. So, that really includes young people themselves, parents, carers, healthcare practitioners, police officers, and loads of other people who contribute to working with young people and trying to sort of promote positive mental health with them. It's a global issue, but we want to sort of make it about MK, so we want to have it as a local conversation. And I say conversation because in order to identify what is working, what's not working, what could be working better, how we can support new interventions that we can put in place to help young people, that all needs to start off with a conversation and start to talk to each other and to professionals and to commissioners who provide the services in Milton Keynes. We all need to have, that's not the fire alarm, is it? I said there was nothing. So a conversation is where we're going to start. I don't know how many of you are aware how professional services in any part of the country, but particularly in MK work. You have the local authority, you have the NHS Trust, and we have our own clinical commissioning group. For those who are fully aware of what all those 3 bodies do, I apologise, but for those who don't, the NHS Trust, and for us that's Central North West London, CNWL, they're the people who provide the services, okay? And they provide them based on what, to some degree, what our clinical commissioning group asks them to deliver. Okay, we're quite lucky in MK because not every geographic area has its own CCG. Now, the local authority also has responsibility for social and sort of some healthcare responsibilities as well, and that was changed back in 2012 with the Health and Social Care Act. So basically, it is a joined-up working partnership that all the professionals sign up to. And I think, it'd be fair to say, and even those in the voluntary sector or the private sector, which is where I'm in now, we don't get it right all the time. I think anyone who professes to get it right all the time is deluding themselves. Not just because things change with young people. I've got 4 children, 11, 8, nearly 9, 6 and 3, and it scares the hell out of me, the world they're coming into. Those who have teenagers already and are sort of, I feel so sorry for young people because they get it from every single direction. They get it from home, they get it from school, they get it from social media, and a lot of that can be positive influences, but also a lot of it can be negative influences. So, when I grew up, if I had a problem at school, I went home, that was my place of safety. A lot of young people now, they go home, they log on, and it just starts all over again. There is something in the news that I'd never heard of before. Sand fishing. Has anyone heard of sand fishing? It's a bit like catfishing. No, it's not. But I think they've coined it off the same expression. So sand fishing is this, I think, this new term that's come out now where we've had a lot of celebrities come out and talk about mental health, which is great, it's fantastic. I think over the last couple of years we've seen particularly Prince Harry, a lot of celebrities talking about mental health difficulties. And I think that's encouraged a lot of the younger generation to do the same. And that's a positive thing, except, if you look at what came out in the news this week about sand fishing, that seems to be turning it back around and almost bullying people who are using social media as a way to ask for support or help with some of the issues they're facing. So I go back to what I said earlier, they're getting it from all directions. So people who are working with young people, I take my hat off to you, because when I was a police officer and I had to go to jobs and sort of work with young people, I say work with now, terminology back then was deal with them, work with them. I wish I knew now, back then, it would have changed, absolutely, promise you, it would have changed the way I dealt with so many people. I met my wife, she's a forensic psychologist who specialises in autism. Some of you may or may not know her, Catherine. And really, it was sort of forced upon me, in a positive way, to understand what mental health is all about. So for the last 7 years, running the practice MK, I've got to work with some fantastic people, and actually I've made a real effort to get to know my clients, and that has taught me so much about just everything about you could learn about mental health, not just by a book or by statistics or by talking to professionals and what their opinions, but actually getting to know my clients who come to the practice and hearing it from them. So going back to sort of clinical commissioning groups, they are charged to deliver services in MK for us. There's something that I understand is transforming over the next few years, and that is we're joining up with Bedford and Luton. BLMK. And part of that work will involve organising a summit, I've been told. It's a document that's been published on the website, so it's from their words, not mine. Organising a summit for children with complex needs and special educational needs, and the summit will look to identify key deliverables to improve service provision. So they will be asking MK for their thoughts on what the services are needed when it comes to working with children and young people. So it's quite important that you all start to do a bit of research around what's happening in MK, because you do have an avenue in to, giving them your experiences and your thoughts on what is needed. Okay, so there are some documents on the website. I've got some links again, which I can share with people in the interval. There is some good work that's being done in MK, but they have to listen to you. That is their job. Okay. I'm going to skip on because I want to get going. We're not going to solve MK's problems in the next couple of hours, but it starts off with this conversation, and on the way in you would have noticed, or would have been asked to put down your thoughts or your inspirations on, there's 2 trees that are going to be, one's going to be kept at the school here, and I think one's been donated by the Parks Trust. And where's that been going, Shannon?
Great Linford Parish Council.
Great Linford Parish Council, okay. So if you haven't already contributed to that, please do. The other way in which you can contribute your thoughts about tonight and about mental health for young people is you've all got cards on your seat, I believe. If you could complete those and hand them, there'll be some volunteers at the interval to collect those from you. So if you do, please complete those and hand them in. And as I said, there will be an email address somewhere where if you do have any thoughts that you want to share or some questions you want to ask but haven't got time to do it this evening, then you can use that email address. Okay. So we were going to have the Mayor do his bit now. He's going to do his bit at the end of the interval before the last two speakers go. So I want to throw over the facts, just a very quick one. Primary school children, 1 in 10, it's now thought, have a mental health disorder, and 1 in 7, 11 to 16-year-olds, and 1 in 6, 17 to 19-year-olds. Someone else at the door? Okay. I don't know. I'm not going to go into that too much because Big Cat has got some statistics for MK, which are more relevant in her part of the event. But sort of untreated anxiety or depression in young people can have a significant impact on employment, income, and relationship stability in adult life. And that's something that we've seen, and I have seen in the police time and time again, that if you don't get it right when they're young, it can have a lasting effect through to adulthood. So let's get it right when they're young. Okay, so I'm going to pass you over now to Leslie, who's going to do her talk. And like I said, can you just save any questions after Leslie's finished? And if there's time, we'll take 3 or 4 questions from the audience. Okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening everybody. Thank you very much. I'm here to talk to you about mental health and how it's affecting young people and the type of practice used in secondary schools. Okay, to recognise and address issues to support young people. In the education system, schools are encouraged to take a whole school approach to mental health, and I work at the Hazley Academy in Milton Keynes with over 1,500 students aged 11 to 18 years. My role in the senior leadership team is mental health and holistic education, including volunteering, student leadership, and the Ofsted criteria of SMSC, which is social, moral, cultural, and spiritual development of all children. As part of the whole school approach, schools develop with students the personal qualities of character, confidence, and creativity, which they need to go on to successful adult lives. We measure this success not only on academic results, but on our students' resilience to challenges they face on their school journey and maturing into young adults. To become a mentally healthy school, there needs to be an inclusive approach, which encourages all students to flourish, learn, and feel that amazing feeling of success. Positive mental health and well-being are fundamental to the values and culture in schools. And this involves all stakeholders, including the children, staff, parents, carers, and governors, where mental health is seen as everybody's responsibility. To enable this to happen, all the different areas of the school need to work together with commitment and passion to create a community of young people ready to go out into the wider world. So how do we make this happen? There are a number of areas in which schools link together to form a web of mental health support for children, including PSHE, student support, counselling and interventions, staff training, working with families and student leadership. So I'm going to talk about each of these different areas in turn. Firstly, PSHE is the personal, social and health education, including sex education, delivered by form tutors. 12 sessions throughout the year are dedicated to mental health for each year group. For example, next year we have planned for Year 7 sessions specifically on strategies to develop positive mental health and in addition how to cope with peer pressure, deal with social media, cyberbullying and making healthy choices. All the way up to sixth form who have bespoke lessons on mental health being delivered, for example, by Mind, BLMK and Consent and how to stay safe with the Milton Keynes charity Brook. Additionally, schools adopt off-timetable days dedicated to mental health training where we can explore in more detail what issues are affecting our young people most and strategies to stay strong. Schools work with outside visitors, and we were fortunate last year to work with Shannon Austin and her team, who came in and worked with our young people, sharing their personal mental health testimonies and journeys with our students, which resulted in good exchange of thoughts, reflection and inquiry from the students on how we live our lives and also how we support ourselves and others in the community. PSHE lessons are guided by statutory requirements and also by the statistics of student concerns raised the previous year. When planning the PSHE lessons, we also consider what issues have been raised. So, for example, last year we had 133 direct mental health concerns raised. 9% of the student population raised these concerns, but 30% of incidents included a mental health issue, such as bullying or safeguarding. So we knew we needed to delve more deeply into these concerns and how we as a school could support the students. The charity Mind, BLMK, gives a statistic that 60% of the adult population report experiencing a common mental health problem, such as anxiety or depression, in any given week. Self-harm, suicidal thoughts and suicide were all recorded as incidents last year, and this is unfortunately not uncommon to hear similar in schools currently. Self-harm was the highest category of reported concerns in schools today. The second area of support offered and given is with counselling and interventions. Students can be forwarded to see the counsellor. We do have one in school who visits once a week. Alternative support routes are also in place if the counsellor isn't immediately available. We do have waiting lists. But that includes a pastoral team of dedicated staff, 6 form peer mentors who we train up, and student mental health ambassadors. Our current cohort are 13, 14 and 15 years old in Year 10. We have found that students gain much more from working with older students, both in emotional and organisational support. Our 6 form peer mentors are fully trained and have scheduled sessions with younger students at form time once a week, where they have one-to-one discussions and reflections about the concerns of our younger students. The student mental health ambassadors have regular meetings, run staff training sessions, giving the student perspective of mental health, and conduct surveys which support the PSHE programme. The last survey the mental health ambassadors did was back in July, and they confirmed that 80% of students recognise anxiety and depression as the most common mental health concerns. 43% of our students said they had a mental health concern at school, and the majority felt that school stress was the area of mental health concern that they wanted most help with. This was certainly a wake-up call for the mental health team, and this message was relayed back to the senior leadership team for further discussion. So, a third area of school development is staff training, and there are nationally run mental health first aid courses, which our staff have attended, which are funded by the government, with free places that go to every school in the country. Student mental health ambassadors have also come in on our inset days and delivered a range of sessions to our staff. One of our students who suffers from panic attacks also gave her testimony during one of these inset days, and she was able to give with real clarity exactly what it feels like when she's having an anxiety attack. And she's much more open and she feels much more confident. She came to me today, this same student. You'll see some of her work displayed over there. Again, her question is constantly, I don't understand why I'm having these anxiety attacks. There was no trigger, nothing happened. So she's still trying to reflect even now and work out what it is that's causing her anxiety attacks. The staff really appreciated the opportunity to ask questions, and our young person was courageously brave. She was acutely nervous about delivering the session. However, this helped her to develop her leadership skills and ability to talk openly, but feel valued that her opinion was important. Finally, we consider that it is vital to work with families. So we have regular sessions in school to invite them in to discuss and reflect on different aspects of mental health. We were really unfortunate to have Nick Canhan come in from, who is one of, might be here this evening. I'm not sure if he's okay. He came in to talk to parents and students about eating disorders and taking questions from students. We also have our website, which is really comprehensive to convey key information and signposting, such as Childline, Young Minds, and other mental health matters. COOF in particular is one we're promoting at the moment, which is a service that all young people can access. We are constantly looking at ways to improve. So there are a number of initiatives happening this school year, which has just begun, including focus days such as World Suicide Prevention Day in September, when students will have a key information presentation at form time, and Mental Health Awareness Week in October, when the mental health ambassadors are doing all sorts of work, particularly on their new anti-bullying ambassador scheme. Just like adults, many young people suffer with a variety of mental health problems. In fact, nearly 1 in 5 children has a mental health issue, and for some this can significantly interfere and impact with their daily lives. Sadly, however, young people are less likely to get mental health treatment than adults. Why would this be? All too often it is suggested that children are expected to grow out of their emotional concerns or problems. This means it's up to parents and carers not to ignore their instinct when they feel their child's emotional health is at risk. So for parents, if you suspect any signs of mental illness such as ADHD, depression, anxiety, eating disorder or self-harming in a young person, it's vital to seek help from an expert such as a GP. You can refer to consultants and mental health services when needed, but please ensure that you do talk to somebody and get the help that is available, and there is a help available for your child. Most of us like to think that our children are doing okay, but if we feel that there is something going on, or if someone we trust says they feel something is wrong, then we need to pay attention, okay, and act immediately. Really listen to what young people are saying. The signs of mental health problems in children vary by age and types of illness, with some psychiatric disorders appearing even in preschool years. However, 2 warning signs tend to cross over into all categories and signal that you should see your GP, which are extreme or peculiar behaviour for the age and gender of the child, such as being significantly more hyper, aggressive or withdrawn. Or sudden, hard-to-explain negative changes in behaviour, such as a steep drop in grades, change in day-to-day personality or character. This is certainly something that teachers are trained to look out for, and we monitor this closely, particularly with progress in grades, and we also alert the form tutor, parents and heads of year should those things happen. Many children, however, may present with more than one mental illness, which makes getting a diagnosis even more challenging. Here are some of the signs of mental illness during different age ranges. In preschool years, hyperactivity way beyond what the other students are showing, trouble sleeping, persistent nightmares, excessive fear, worrying or crying are all indicators. Some signs that you may think are signs of mental illness may in fact be symptoms of another condition entirely, such as a sleep disorder, but you should still seek medical help if you see those factors. Once children reach primary school age, a good indicator of well-being is to consider is your child's relationships. A child might only have 1 or 2 friends, but it's not the number of friends that matters, it's the type of friends and how well your child maintains those friendships. In addition, look out for excessive fears and worries, hyperactivity, sudden decrease in school performance, loss of interest in friends or favourite activities, weight changes and prolonged sadness. From a parent perspective, it is hard to fathom what type of mental health issue is presenting itself. For example, depression in children can also be accompanied by hyperactivity, but depression can also lead to a loss of appetite. During the teenage years, the behaviours may be more pronounced as children get older. Symptoms to look out for include destructive behaviours such as damaging property or setting fires, constantly threatening to run away or running away, which can be a precursor to self-harm, withdrawal from family and friends, or comments or writings that suggest a desire to harm themselves or others. Once you seek help, your child will be evaluated. Parent and carer participation in both the evaluation and the treatment of your child is essential. Younger children are often treated with the involvement of their caregivers and families. Medication, therapy, behaviour change, modifications in the school setting and other tools may be needed to help you and your child depending on the diagnosis. So thank you very much for listening. and I hope that you have found this talk helpful. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Spot on. Right, do you have any questions for Leslie?
Okay.
Oh, easy. I saw you.
My question is, how universal is your approach across the schools, and how do you share information to young people to other schools?
We have regular meetings, yes. So we have different sort of areas within the school that get together. So different subject areas. So, for example, the geography department, all the teachers will meet across the schools for geography. It's the same with mental health. So we have all sorts of initiatives that come through Milton Keynes Council. We work with national bodies such as Anna Freud, where we all get together. So these are sort of mental health charities that are working to support the schools.
So you also mentioned that the government offer places for all the schools. Are the schools expected to send people, and do they? Or
I don't have the statistics, but every conversation I've had, people are, biting at the bit to get to those first aid mental health training sessions. So everything that I've seen is an indicator that yes, schools are definitely getting involved in those. Yeah.
Anyone else? Any little hands? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. So our next speaker is Tracy, and Tracy is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer, I hope I said that right, for Health Watch in Milton Keynes. And I'd like to invite her to come up and say a few words.
Hi everyone, as just heard Tracy. So I don't normally read from a speech, but Shannon has made me write an actual speech so I stay on target. So it's a bit strange for me. So I'm the Deputy Chief Executive for Health Watch Milton Keynes. We're a consumer champion for health and social care. I love this particular job because we get to keep an eye on health and social care providers, commissioners. You can all hear me, right? I'm never the quietest one in a room, so Health Watch, we keep an eye on all things health and adult social care. And when I say adult social care, we look after under health, we look after adult and children. We keep an eye on sort of everything. And if we see something in children's social care, then we make sure that we're passing that information on to other areas, other organisations that can make change there, that have the statutory right to do that. So, and we make sure that these commissioners, these providers, these organisations keep people at the heart of everything they do. And it's not an easy job. That's not just for us, that's for those organisations that are providing and paying for the services. Because budgets are tight, people that have been doing jobs for a long time, and we all remember that teacher, right? That teacher that should have retired. So sometimes people have been doing jobs a long time and they just kind of forget that it's that person, that they get more involved in the job than in the person that they're supposed to be serving. So all of us are guilty sometimes of thinking that we know best, what's best for other people, what they need from our services, and always with the best of intentions. And if you've got family, you're often sitting there, and your friends, you're like, I think you should, and you need to, and we all know how well those conversations go, right? Not great. So one thing of us at Health Watch are passionate about is people's voices, and making sure that they're heard. So there's a lot of work going on for and around young people in both health and social care at the moment, and a really big focus on mental health. And we want to make sure that it's the right help. So Dom, just remembered his name, Dom was mentioning that there's a summit coming up. If you can't get to that, if you can't do that, Health Watch are a statutory body that we are charged with making sure that we get hold of your voices and that we amplify those voices and we present those thoughts, opinions, experiences to the commissioners and providers of services to say, hey, this is working really well, don't change a thing, because sometimes everything is going great and then they tweak it and it all falls apart. So we'll say, like, leave that alone, that's fantastic. Or we may say, look, people have said that actually this is what they need. This is what they need from this service. You're giving them this, but actually they'd really like that instead. And so we can only do that with your help, and I do mean your help. We don't want to sit in the back room being the ones to decide what you need. You're the ones that know best what you need, and so we need you to tell us and have that conversation to find out what works and what's missing, what needs to change and what needs to be left alone. So I was going to talk about the survey card, but Don stole that part of my speech as well. But if you haven't filled out the survey card, please do. And please do take some time to write in. The most important thing is to have solutions. There's no point just pointing out problems all the time. And especially for people that have been doing the job and they're getting told by kind of government, you have to do this, you have to deliver that. Sometimes if it's not working, it's us that need to say, actually, have you tried it this way? So do spend a little time thinking about what would improve that service for you, and write that down, because we will be collecting that and we will be passing that back to them. So this is a chance for you to actually make an improvement. So last year we collated, Healthwatch Milton Keynes collated all the stories that adults had told us about their experiences of mental health services in Milton Keynes. We put them into a report. It's been really successful. CNWL, who we heard about earlier, have taken that report and used it as sort of a foundation conversation starter at their redesign, their system redesign, because they've realised that some of their services aren't working as well as they should. They're not delivering what they should be delivering. They've been given less money from the government to do more things with, so they need to make sure that they're designing services with people. Because again, we've already seen sort of how expensive things are when somebody else sits in a back room and decides what they think we need. So this is about, again, so that's how Healthwatch manages to use people's voices, experiences, stories to improve things. And we did, doing that report, highlighted quite a gap. We realised that we actually didn't have many young people's voices in there. We hadn't created the time. And because we're old, except for Anna, because we're old, it's not a group that we have a lot of natural contact with, so we have to actually make sure that we carve out the time to make sure that those voices are being heard as well, that they are valued and important. So we have a whole project this year on young people, and Anna's going out to schools. She's been to freshers' fairs, and unsurprisingly, mental health has come up as quite a priority for young people about what is concerning them most for their next school year. Sorry, am I stealing yours now? No. And you can probably hear from my accent, I'm not from around here. But my dad is from Kettering, so I'm like almost local. I started working as a hairdresser when I was a teenager. Can't quite give it up. Although now I'm wearing glasses, I'm finding it really hard to cut it myself. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to find a hairdresser soon. Sorry, I digress. So, hairdressing, you're a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, a person to share good news with. So, it's always been something that, I don't know, I've been quite good at, I think. So, as a mature student, I went off to university and did an honours degree in religious studies and criminology with a view to saving the world. It was a view to state crime, putting them together. So I was offered the opportunity to apply for a job with the UN in Geneva. My mother was really excited, thinking about coming and visiting me on her holidays. But just before I sent in my application, I watched a movie. It's a really bad Nicolas Cage movie, Lord of War. Anybody? Right. I cried at the end of that movie. When that movie finished, I was sobbing. It's not even that good a movie, but I was just absolutely sobbing because it was actually at that moment that I realised I'm not going to save the world. But I sat down, had to think about what I was doing with my life, where I was going, what I was sort of focusing my energies on, and thought about what I could change, what was within my power to change. And I thought, rather than going off to the UN, which was great, and would have paid much better, kicking myself now. I decided to take a job with an organisation called Victim Support in New Zealand. So we supported victims of crime and serious trauma, and we discovered that people with mental ill health were overrepresented in both the victim and the perpetrator. And we used to say, without alcohol and mental health, there would be no crime stats. It was just really, really prevalent. So a lot of our time was spent ensuring that the system provided the help that victims needed to survive the crisis that had occurred. And I loved that because it meant that we could actually really empower people to take back some control of their lives. Because any time you've suffered any kind of trauma, that's what's been ripped away, is that control. So we really worked to empower people, and we worked to challenge those areas where there were gaps in services and where those gaps were letting people down. So now I've moved here, and so now my backyard is Milton Keynes. And so I want to support and empower my new people. And so we need to empower young people to challenge those areas where there are gaps, where mental health services in particular is our focus tonight, where those gaps are not allowing them to take control of their own lives, where they're being sort of taken on paths that have been decreed by other people. So the biggest part of both jobs has always been listening. You wouldn't believe that tonight, would you? But listening to people, what people are telling us, and actually really listening, but actually really getting to the bottom of what is going on, what people are telling us, and that may not be what they're actually saying. That may take a little bit more of a conversation. One of the ways we do this is to make sure that people feel safe when they share their stories with us, to make sure that they feel safe, that there won't be any judgment. We don't judge what's bothering people. That's not our job. We need to make sure that they feel safe, that they will be heard, and that something will happen with that. And we can't make change happen overnight, but we can definitely keep nagging. So we can't make the big changes, not always straight away, but we can make sure that the system has the information that it needs to be able to make those changes. We can monitor what they're doing, and we can challenge them when we think that they've missed the point. And so, again, to get the changes that you guys need, we need to work together. So tonight is an opportunity for you to be part of that. It's the start of a conversation, and there will be like I said, as Dom said, the email address. So you don't necessarily need to find us and talk to us, because it can be a bit intimidating when there's a lot of people and you're talking about something quite personal. You don't need to talk to us here. But Health Watch, yes, the schools, the teachers, everybody. I was looking at you, I'm like, yeah, maybe. But we are always here to listen, and we are always here. So if you tell your story to another organisation, they can share that with us. We don't need to know your name. We don't need to know all the details. We just need to know what the problem is, and what would fix that, what improvement would make a difference. So, thank you.
Thank you. I did a still part of her speech, so I apologise. But is there any questions for Tracy before we move on to our next speaker? I've got a question. How many of you, be honest, how many of you knew or had heard of Health Watch before tonight? I mean, I didn't. But actually, until I got involved in the Autism Partnership Board, I had never heard of Health Watch. So,
I have to say, at an event that we haven't organised, that may be the most hands I have ever seen that have heard of Health Watch. So I'm really, really impressed. We've worked really hard to get our name out there and how we can help. So, yes, it's working, Anna. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Just before I introduce our last speaker, before we break and have some refreshments, Tracy actually mentioned it about a summit coming up. This is why I need to read what I write when I prepare public speaking. I've just come off a temporary ban of public speaking because of things I say that aren't quite true. The summit, I should have clarified, I was rushing through because we were late starting, is something that is part of a transformation delivery plan. So it's one part of that plan with sort of Bedford, Luton, Milton Keynes starting to look at how they can utilise and share services, for the future. And it is just one thing on that agenda. I don't know if there's anyone from CNWL so sort of panicking over when's the summit. I don't even need a date for it yet. It's just part of what they're going to do to gather the thoughts and feelings around those three areas. Okay, so I just thought I'd very quickly clarify myself. Right, our next speaker is called Jenny. And Jenny works for a housing charity and she manages supported accommodation for service users with mental health and those with dual diagnosis of other conditions as well. So, welcome, Jenny.
Everybody hear me? I've got a crowd. Okay, so thank you all for coming this evening. So, having been invited to talk to you this evening about the effect poor mental health can have on younger people and their siblings, rather than deliver a series of statistics, I prefer to give a very personal insight from a personal perspective. So I've been privileged to manage a mental health accommodation service over the last 2 years. During this time, I led a team which supported all of our residents, 3 of them younger people, to recover and move on to live independently, equipped with the resilient skills needed to survive and overcome the type of problems that caused them to come to services in the first place. Because I've developed a natural compassionate approach to supporting others based on my own life journey, I'm confident to provide this support and understand how to tailor my approach to meet the needs of the individual. So how did this come about? I don't remember absolutely everything from my childhood on, but there's very little I forget. The ability I have to remember things that happened to me so long ago in such detail amazes people. I utilise these memories by drawing upon them subconsciously and seeking effective solutions to dilemmas that present. In other words, my uniquely developed resilience. I remember all the emotion associated with looking after my younger brother throughout his school years. He'd become exceptionally placid as a consequence of serious illness, and as a result was an easy bullying target. As I grew up, everyone commented on how mature my outlook on life was, how impressed they were that I could anticipate the needs of my brother, and how good I was at advocating for him. All the way up until he was 16, and by then were able to do this for himself. Without realising it, throughout my young life, I was developing strong mental health resilience. Thinking back, the fact I was training myself to care from such an early period in my life allowed me to develop a skill set for perception and need for others, along with a philosophical approach to life. This skill set steered me naturally into a career path spanning over 30 years in health and social care services. This developed philosophical approach has even affected the way my own children think. At the age of 8, my eldest son told his teacher that he was looking forward to when he could leave school so he could choose where he wanted to be and with whom he wanted to be with. His teacher told me this was the most profound statement she'd ever heard from someone of his age. She and I agreed that although he was clearly unhappy with where he was at that moment in time, the fact that he'd communicated this and already worked out a solution was enough to reassure us both he was already developing resilience. His teacher said she thanked him for speaking to her and told him that he could come to her at any time if he needed to. My son remembers her as his favourite teacher to this day. I didn't mention this conversation with him until many years later, because at the time I realised that he'd chosen to confide his feelings in her and not in me, and that was okay. How many younger people think this way at school or at home, but don't wish to communicate it because they don't trust the consequences? Do we encourage open conversation at home, ensuring that we don't dictate or lead how the conversation should go? Do we encourage our younger people to express how they feel with those they trust, with whom they know won't judge them punitively? Do we nurture the opportunity to develop resilience? When I was 13, I remember taking a phone call on our house phone. It was a long time ago. The voice was a girl's who mentioned my best friend by name and how we needed to look out because we were going to be attacked at school the following day. She then hung up. I was paralysed with fear and started to cry. When I explained this to my parents, what I'd been told, they both laughed and said it was clearly a mischievous prankster who knew us and got my phone number from the directory. They were, of course, right, and the prankster confessed the next day. But I didn't sleep that night with the worry of what I could possibly have done to cause someone to want to harm us. I can't even begin to think how tormented young people must feel today should they receive something similar, especially in written form, where emphasis being placed on certain words can completely change their context. The fact I opened up to my parents immediately at least allowed me to see their perspective on the situation, the voice of experience. I could speak for my parents, but not everybody has a parent they can go to. How many of our younger people actually open up to an adult they can trust when struggling with something they've read or heard via social media? Do we encourage them to do this? When I was growing up, we only had 3 TV channels, which all shut down overnight, as I said already. The programmes shown had all passed rigorous scrutiny to ensure my viewing pleasure wasn't changed in any way. Today, children's TV is available 24/7. In fact, any TV programme can be selected via computer or smartphone at any time. Parental controls can manage what a very young child views. However, the fact remains that when it comes to IT, younger people can soon learn how to override the safeguards older adults put in place to protect them, usually from their peers. There follows then the risk that brains can be overstimulated at any time by a whole host of information, especially young brains that lack insight to provide context on what has been viewed. I was shocked when I recently saw a well-known children's programme in HD where the colours were so vibrant that I felt a sharp pain in my head. And no, I'm not autistic. It raises the question, what effect does this constant bombardment and overload of information have on young persons' minds and subsequent thought processes? Do they know how much is too much, and can they tell others? As a grown-up that remembers almost everything about growing up, I know the best thing I gave my sons was my time. Time to take notice of their behaviour patterns, time to ask them how they were, and even more importantly, time to listen and take note of their response. Time to advise from the voice of experience perspective, delivered in a way that they didn't feel they had to follow, more as one to learn from and take on board because it made sense to. I remember when I first started as a home help at the age of 19, and rubbing my hands having come in from the cold on my bike, and a lady I was visiting telling me to wear your gloves. My response being, it's okay, I'm all right. And then holding up their hands to show very arthritic fingers and saying gently again, wear your gloves. I then wore my gloves forever after on a cold day. This was the voice of experience demonstrating in the clearest way so that I took notice and heeded the warning. I also remember another occasion when I just split from a long-term boyfriend and a lady asked me why I looked so sad. When I explained, her response was, my dear, I know you won't believe me right now because it hurts so much, but we've all been there. Please trust me, you will find the right person one day, and when you do, this pain will lift and become a distant memory. I met that person, my now husband, just a few weeks later. I often remember what she said to me, and I've also shared it many times with others. Whenever I hear older people say, I wish I knew then what I know now, because I would have lived my life very differently, I feel fortunate, because I utilise the experiences shared by my older clients, considering them as training sessions for my own life. The point I'm hoping to make is that our younger people should be made aware of the value in engaging with older people to listen and share their life experiences and so assist with developing resilience. I never really knew my grandparents as they died when I was 12. Grandparents especially provide an additional layer of support for young people close enough to know, but not so close as to adversely judge any mistakes made in a way that a parent might. My sons have enjoyed having grandparents around them into their late 20s. Skullduggery is good. My mother-in-law used to come over from Spain to stay for a few months in summer and would invite my sons, then aged 10 and 12, down to the conservatory to play cards at midnight by way of a secret plan they made together earlier. My sons remember this with glee, especially so because I never found out. They would tell their nan things they wouldn't dream of discussing with me, and she never told. They could offload onto her any of their worries: school, me, food, house rules, friends, and she would listen and then advise. I only know all of this because they told me after she passed away, adding just how much they loved and valued her because of this. So do we make enough time and opportunities today to explain things to our younger people as clearly as they can be explained in the context of their understanding, from the perspective of the voice of experience? For many younger people, access to chatting with grandparents can be limited as families move further apart. What effect has this loss of opportunity to meet and talk regularly with older generation relatives had on younger people? So how can we as adults help our younger people to maintain mental wellness and recover from mental ill health? It's good to talk. I can talk for England. I talk too much, some say. Anecdotes are good. Expressions of self, all eaten up hungrily by younger people once you have their attention. When it comes to promoting good mental health, it's vital to talk and also to listen in return, to seriously listen and interact appropriately. How many times are we multitasking whilst trying to listen, nodding away whilst listening and at the same time writing or looking at something on our mobile phones? Reassurance is provided by presence, total presence, taking as much time as required to talk and time to listen, a shared, supported journey to recovery of thought processes, taking time to identify the areas in one's life affecting mental health positively and negatively, working out together a plan for recovery, being prepared for a baby steps approach, being prepared for setbacks, being prepared for good days and bad ones, and not reducing your resolve to support the person in their recovery despite feeling despondent at times. Celebrating success and having fun, not being afraid to find a way to have a laugh even during times of sadness and difficulty. Laughter really is the best universal medicine. Being there for the person when they need you, night or day. Answering the phone when they call you for the umpteenth time that day, as they just might need to talk to you, and you might just be the only one who is willing to talk to them, or the only one with whom they feel they can talk and communicate with effectively. To empower with illustrations that can't be argued with, that create rationalisation and positive thought processes. To share your compassionate self with them, whether you are their parent, sibling, friend, or work colleague. This approach is becoming increasingly important as access to professional services becomes more and more difficult. We need to become more self-resilient and confident in the informal support we have available around us and at hand. Mental health illness can affect any one of us at any time if our resolve or resilience declines for any reason. I prefer to think instead in terms of mental health wellness in the same way as we do regarding our physical health wellness. All the excessive stimulation that our younger people face day on day can be hard for us older adults to take into account due to our own hectic and busy lives. We need to make time to communicate effectively and be prepared to help out. Our younger people are known to us, so if we have a head start in noticing problems over and above any professional, if we just take the time to look and inquire, and above all else, trust our instincts. The feeling of isolation and loneliness is one of the greatest causes of depression in all age groups. Sharing our experiences with and listening to those of younger people are more therapeutic than we can ever imagine. They create perception, provide context, and in turn develop resilience for their future lives. I would like to close with one of our service's favourite quotes that often kept us going in the face of adversity, from the self-help author, motivational speaker, and father of motivation, Dr. Wayne Dyer. With everything that has happened to you, you can feel sorry for yourself or treat what has happened as a gift. Everything is either an opportunity to grow or an obstacle to keep you from growing. You get to choose. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jenny. Now, before we all start to get up, are the teaspoons and the teas and the coffees, are we all ready to go, really? Right, so why don't we just give them their 2-minute warning. Is there any questions for Jenny? No questions? Okay then. Well, I suggest then we break for some refreshments. I will announce when we come back, about half an hour, 35 minutes-ish, so that we can finish on time this evening.
Should we put this door open? I've got it. You've got it, haven't you? Sign your name, sorry, I'm calling you. Excuse me?
Signing. No, I was just looking for my colleague who's the presentation.
He's not going to be there long.
My colleague is the presentation.
She's just saying, do you think we can have it there? I said it's not going to be there long. I'll squeeze that way.
Rachel Clark from Sendai.
Rachel Clark.
You like that one?
Well, it's wonderful. The Mayor of Milton Keynes has arrived, and he would like to take a few minutes of your time to share some of his thoughts and opinions. So, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Sam Crooks, welcome.
Thank you, gosh. And it works too. Wow. I think I just want to start first with an apology for having arrived in the middle. I originally accepted this invitation a long time ago to open the conference, but it was overtaken by a big meeting tonight in the gallery involving some 30 cities from throughout the European Union, which was arranged at fairly short notice for various reasons. That's the kind of thing the city maintains a mayor for, and I just had to be there. A deputy wouldn't have worked. But I was very, very pleased because we were talking about Milton Keynes, and one of the things that was cited as good practice to be spread throughout the rest of Europe was the Great Linford Breakfast Club. So well done. Thank you. I felt very proud of that. I come from a country, Ireland, and a generation which didn't talk about mental health. If you had depressed for any reason, you got to stiff up a lip and were told just to get on with life. Dementia, things like that, you were away with the fairies. And to our shame, I discovered a Northern Ireland document dating from 2009 that talked of mental defectives. So that just shows how in this city, over the last few years, we've advanced so much, because I believe that complete openness about mental health and realizing the importance of mental health alongside physical health, that helps remove the stigma. And if you remove the stigma, then we can be completely open about the situation that we might be in. What I've been asked to do tonight is to pick up 4 or 5 points that I've seen just moving around and that people have mentioned to me. One of the most important is the waiting list for any kind of diagnosis. I'm going to give you a physical example of that as it was put to me, because it really brings it home. Imagine you broke your leg and you needed a diagnosis. Imagine that you were told you couldn't get a diagnosis in Milton Keynes, you had to go to Leicester. And imagine that you couldn't get it immediately. In Leicester you could be seen in 28 weeks' time. We would never accept that for a broken leg. And one of the things we have to achieve is that we will never accept it in this city for a mental health diagnosis. Another thing I've become very aware of, and this statistic was given to me at lunch today, is that some 50% of adult mental health issues are actually found in school before the age of 14. In other words, they're established before the age of 14. And the point that was being made to me was the importance of physical health and physical exercise in schools as a way of addressing that. The organisation that looks after school activity in both Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes is called LEAP. And they at the moment are negotiating with the government a grant to be able to apply the whole issue of physical activity in schools, of actually in January starting a campaign to actually address that issue with government backing. So I think if they can pull that off, that'll be tremendous news for us. And while in schools, there is a much greater emphasis now on closer reporting and monitoring of mental health. And governors and teachers who were the safeguarding leads have often taken mental health on as well. But a cautionary note, there isn't really any training or expertise at that level, and those governors and teachers are very often the first people to admit that. And so we need to provide the infrastructure to help the people who have taken on those responsibilities in schools to do them better. For my sins, I'm a magistrate. And the thing that cripples me is that if you look at the statistics of people in Oak Hill who have entered the criminal justice system, 90% of those young people have been diagnosed or are thought to have a mental health issue. And I think that's a terrible indictment of our society, that we find that the only way that we can deal with them is to put them into prison. I know there has to be an element of protection of the public. I fully understand that. But a humane society, I believe, could deal better with people in that situation. And particularly at that age. Because if you go into Oak Hill, it won't be that much longer before you're in Wood Hill and entering the adult system. And lastly, and I want to pay tribute to Kat here, because it was she who actually mentioned this to me. You'll be hearing from her, I believe, in a moment. I think there's an issue with young people which is defined as loneliness, but I'm not quite sure that's the best word. I think the relationships between young people at an age when hormones are going wild, I think issues of fear, rejection, embarrassment are all very, very live to people in a way that perhaps we who are older have forgotten or don't now remember. One of the great things that I think the Youth Information Service do is to get people, particularly boys, actually talking about how they're feeling. And I've seen that happening in school also. Rainbow circles as you come in at the beginning of the day, and the kids actually say how they feel as they face the day. And this comes back to my point about stigma. If we can get people talking about what's going on inside them, then I think we begin to address the issue, the real underlying issues of mental health. Those are the impressions, the 5 impressions that I've formed just in the last few months going around. But there is something I want to end with. I've attended a number of functions like this, and I've met a number of organisations who in their different ways are addressing some of the issues that I've mentioned. And there it stops. And we all meet again in 6 months' time under another head perhaps. We need some kind of coordinated action plan that will actually build on the openness that I've been talking about and moving it forward. And saying that in this city, certain attitudes are no longer acceptable. We can't, as they did in Northern Ireland 10 years ago, talk about mental defectives. We can't allow that kind of hidden attitude to happen here. If we've got problems of diagnosis, problems of resource, other problems, we have got to address those and campaign to change those. And so if we get anything out of tonight, which will take us forward, I would urge you to consider or to think of an action plan that will address in a campaigning sense some of the issues that you've identified and we need to resolve. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, our next speaker has been managing the Special Educational Needs and Disability Service for the last 5 years. Her name is Jane Cliff. A warm welcome, Jane. Come up to the front. It's the clicky one, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you very much. Cross, there we go. Good evening, everybody. As Dominic said, I'm Jane Cliff and I manage the SEND Information Advice and Support Service in Milton Keynes. My talk is more of a personal reflection, I think there's been a huge theme that's sort of, or a thread that's run through this evening about communication, and for me that's a real biggie. I hope you can see that. It looks a little bit blurred to me. Am I in the way? Okay. I think being a teenager is really hard, isn't it? I was one. I do remember, believe it or not, it was a long time ago, but I have quite vivid memories actually of being a teenager. Some things were good, some things were not so good. I've got 3 daughters and I've supported them through their teenage years. I've still got one at home, which is nearly there, but not quite. And for me, and I'm not talking about people who are really unwell, this is about people, young people who are experiencing feelings which are confusing. And I think I just want to try and normalise some of those. You know, it is really normal to worry about things. Can you see it? Sorry. It's normal to feel anxious, and it's normal not to want to go to school some days. And actually it's okay to feel scared, it's okay to feel sad, and it's okay to feel confused. But this is a theme that is really running through tonight. You know, when you have those feelings of anxiety, of sadness, confusion, you know, it really helps and is really important, I think, to talk to somebody. Speak to somebody about how you feel. Now, you know, we've touched upon grandparents, that might not be for everybody. You might not want to talk to your mum and dad. I know when I met my husband now, we met when we were very young, he didn't speak to his dad, and I was horrified because I did actually communicate with my father, but he was 17 and they really didn't talk. But that went by, they became good friends again, and so it's finding whoever you relate to, really, somebody you know who's going to listen to you, and it could just be your friend, it could be your teacher, if you've got a good relationship with them. But I think the important thing is everybody has these feelings, and even as adults we have these feelings as well. But I think, you know, as the Mayor touched on, you know, ranging hormones and all the rest of it, it's very, very intense when you're a teenager. And, you know, this is often enough. It's often enough to make you feel better. It's often enough to reassure you that it's normal. It's often enough to help you to understand that sometimes those feelings that you might think are anxiety, I mean, when you read about all the sort of anxiety out there, it's not surprising some of our young people think, oh my God, you know, I've got anxiety issues. And for some people, obviously, they generally have, but I think if we can try and normalise it as well, you know, it might be you're just feeling a bit nervous about something, or excitement, or, you know, all those other weird feelings that you get. And I think it's, you know, by talking to somebody, you often stop it spiralling out of control as well. Experiencing new things can be really scary and make you feel very strange. But, you know, often when you've pushed yourself to do something that you didn't really want to do, and I've been there many times, you feel brilliant afterwards because you've overcome something, and that helps you to build that resilience that we were talking about earlier. You know, you start to believe in yourself a bit more. I was very shy and not very confident as a teenager, and if I could look back, we've all done a bit of that, looking back to when we were that age, and, you know, to have thought that I would be standing here talking to a group of people, I just wouldn't have believed that. So, you know, it's building that confidence, that resilience, that you then move on to the next step and the next step. But obviously sometimes that isn't enough. But I think it's even more important then to speak to somebody. One of the examples I was thinking about was my youngest daughter, who was being bullied. It was name calling essentially, but it wasn't. It was pretty horrible. It was a group of older boys who didn't know any better at the time. She'd gone to a new secondary school, not that near to where we lived, so she'd overcome that hurdle. And some people may have dismissed it. They may have said, you know, it's nothing, just get on with it, you're being silly. But it wasn't silly, and it really bothered her, and I could see that it was upsetting her a great deal. And actually it did carry on to a lesser degree afterwards, and eventually, you know, boys grew up, they became friends, I think, eventually. It could have been girls, it had to be boys in this instance. But I think actually what happened at that point really helped her to cope and to deal with it. And it was, you know, it was a simple process. Some of the things that Leslie was talking about that happened in school. Our service, we work with schools all the time. Some schools do it brilliantly, and other schools do it less brilliantly. So for me, it was, you know, I made a phone call, I contacted the head of year. She took it very seriously, it wasn't dismissed at all. She spoke with my daughter. The head of year and the form tutor spoke together. They came up with a plan. She called me back. Both my daughter and I were told about the plan. We were asked if it was okay. And why did this help? Well, you know, that problem was shared. It was shared with me. I was really worried about it, but I was reassured, my daughter was reassured. there was a plan. I remember vividly, she said, well, we have a step 1, and if that doesn't work, we'll go to step 2, and we'll go to step 3. So it was really robust and a sensible plan. So that listening, that reassurance really helped. And it helped my daughter with that particular problem, but actually I think it helped her moving forward through, it wasn't easy. She's not at school now, but only just, and I can't say it was the easiest of times, but it had that resilience again started to build. She knew that if she had a problem, she was going to be listened to, she was going to be taken seriously, and it didn't spiral out of control. The other thing, I think, is being a parent of a teenager is really hard as well, really hard. And you might be worried about your young person, you might be thinking, are they withdrawn, are they staying in their bedroom a lot, are they reluctant to go to school, are they tired all the time? Well, the trouble is, those things relate to most teenagers, don't they? Some of the time, most of the time. So I think somebody else mentioned about, I don't know whether it was Leslie, I can't remember now, but or Jenny, but it's that gut feeling. You have a gut feeling that something is wrong with your young person, then go with it, because 9 times out of 10 you'll be right, I think. And again, share those feelings, find the right person, somebody like Leslie who has that responsibility for pastoral care. Or again, it could be, just that person who's going to listen and who's going to act. Somebody at the school or the college or wherever your young person is. Services such as ours, we might not be the right service for you, but we will always listen. We have an advice line, and we will signpost you to wherever. So it's definitely worth a try. And again, this is something that's been mentioned before, keep talking. Really, really important with teenagers, I think, young people. And it's about making that time, isn't it? And I really like that whatever it is, dinosaur. You feel exhausted sometimes as a parent, don't you? We have our own worries, we have other children to look after. I remember, because I had my 3rd child later, so I had teenagers and a baby. I mean, can you imagine what that was like? Mad, but wonderful. And we're all best buddies now. So, life, some of the parents that come through our service have really chaotic, complex lives. And, for them, those priorities, things go down the list. And that's really hard. As I've said, there are endless reasons why you don't always keep talking. But I think that communication is really, really important. And the more you talk, the more you will have the opportunities to see when things are beginning to go wrong. So when do you talk to that young person? Well, I found the car was quite good. They can't get away. They're locked in. They're not actually looking at you, so you haven't got that sort of confrontation. You could be driving along and, saying things. That worked quite well, I found. My youngest, who I said is still at home, sometimes I think absolutely no point pursuing it. Close the shop. Other times she won't stop, so I really make the most of those times. And then Alice, my middle daughter, she would do that just as I was going to bed. Mum, I need to talk to you about something. Oh my goodness, you're on your knees really, especially thinking of that younger one I had. Always very tired, ready to sleep, but actually 9 times out of 10 it was something I needed to know about. I wanted to know about. And what happened then, she felt a lot better, she'd offloaded, passed it on to me, I lay there awake 2 hours, worrying about it. But that's the responsibility of being a parent, isn't it? That's what you take on when you have kids. So I often remind her of that now, actually. Help and support. It's really important, and not just young people, but parents get supported as well. We all need support from time to time. And I know it doesn't always feel that mental health support is out there. It doesn't feel that we're doing it very well. But I just, from a personal perspective and from a professional perspective, I feel things are happening. It's really high on the national agenda. It's, as we've been talking about, there are things going on in Milton Keynes as well. So there's mental health needs in schools and all the things that Leslie was talking about. So I think if there is a positive feel to it, it's not enough, it will never be enough. Our service, we've got a new caseworker, Zainab, she's at the back there, which is really exciting because Zainab's role is about post-16, so Zainab's going to be focusing on supporting those young people. Zainab's got lots of experience, she's hit the ground running, amazing contacts she's made in a few weeks. We've also got Rachel at the back there who's from the team as well, so if you want to talk to any of us afterwards, please do. We're hoping to also, this is probably next year, to Zainab's made all these wonderful contacts and spoken to all these young people to find out what they want in the way of support. We'd like to probably offer some sort of low level, as I said, it's not for young people who are really unwell, but to offer some resilience and anxiety workshops to schools. So hopefully next year we'll be able to do that. And the service, as I say, we can signpost to other support if it's not us. We work alongside lots of teams as well. So in the local authority, there's children and family practice practitioners, workers who are the universal level of support on the social care side. We often work with them so that we can really help that young person in a more holistic way, with that young person at the centre of it. So just a little bit about the service, quickly. I've mentioned Zainab and the other caseworkers. So our remit is around impartial information, advice and support across education, health and social care. It's quite a wide remit. So it's as defined in the SEND Code of Practice, and we support not only young people but children and parents and carers. The impartiality is important because we work, even though the core funding comes from the council, we work at arm's length from the council, so we have a challenging role. So if it's appropriate, we will explore statutory decisions with young people or parents, and if appropriate, we will support them to challenge those decisions. We're a confidential service, we won't pass on any information to anybody or discuss the situation with anybody else without your permission. Informal advocacy we will support with, so if a young person is not able to find their voice, or a parent as well, we will help you to express your opinions, and as I say, we help parents as well. So those are I don't know whether we're distributing the PowerPoints or
We can do.
if anybody would like the information. There's leaflets of ours on the back desk actually, which has got all that on. Zainab's mobile is primarily for young people to contact her, so we felt that texting, or we're looking at other ways as well of communicating with young people. And then just some other sources of local and national help. So thank you, that's me done.
Do we have any questions before we move on to our last speaker for this evening? No? Okay, well then I'd like to warmly welcome Kat Newman up to the front. Kat's from the Youth Information Service, which has already been mentioned already this evening. And while she's just getting set up.
My name's Kat, I work for Youth Counselling Service, and we provide free counselling to 11 to 21 year olds who live, work or learn in Milton Keynes. On average we offer them 6 sessions, but we can offer them more if they need it. So I'm going to try with the clicker. So I've got a bit of audience participation, it's just this slide, don't worry, I'm not going to get anyone up at the front. But what percentage of young people with a diagnosed mental health issue does the government aim to treat currently? Has anyone got any ideas? Shout them out. 75%. Dom, you've seen the presentation, don't cheat. Anyone else? Got any lower, higher? 50%, 5%? 60. So it's 35%. So currently, the amount of young people with a diagnosed mental health issue that are being seen by cancer is 25%. And by the end of their current plan, future in mind, in 10 years, the aim is to see 35% of young people. I don't say this to dishearten us, but I think we can't just look to the NHS, the CCG and the council for an answer. It's about all of us, including private practice like Dom or myself in the charity sector, starting to think differently about how we support young people's mental health and how we can all be a part of that. And I know some of the fantastic speakers before me have already talked about that a bit. So a little bit more about Youth Counselling Service. I thought it would be interesting to give you some kind of different statistics and data. Some of you will be young people, some of you will be professionals, but the kind of people that we see. So these slides are taken from our annual review, which is on our website. So if you want to go back to this information or have a bit of a deeper dive at a data set, you can go onto that. And I've got lots of business cards with me if you need the website, but otherwise just Google this. So this is from our last year, so 2018 to 2019, and I'll try to update as we go. But last year we saw 167 young people who had about 6 sessions on average, but a further 160 weren't able to be seen due to our closed waiting list. So it just gives you a bit of an idea of the extent of young people who are asking for mental health support and not necessarily receiving it. Now we've been working really hard to try to be able to see the other 50% that we can't currently see. And one of the ways that we've done that is we've been asking parish councils, schools, GP clusters to buy packages, which basically buy a counsellor, which means that they can see some young people. Great Linford Parish Council, who created this event, have paid for 2 counsellors. So they've paid for 40 young people from Great Linford and their parish boundaries, I don't know the exact terminology, but to see a counsellor and to see a counsellor quickly. If anyone would like to talk about those, there's lots of folders at the back of it to come and speak to me. But that's one way that we're trying to really tackle it. We currently work with a number of different charities like Ride High and YMCA. We've got Newsdale School, Shenley Brook End School, Stantonbury Parish Council, West Bletchley Parish Council. So there's a huge amount of support locally, and everyone really is pitching in to try to help us to see all of the young people that need mental health support. And I'll tell us a little bit more about that. So for those of you who don't know YIS very well, we work in community bases across the city. We've got Brook in central Milton Keynes, we work out of Milton Keynes College, we work out of the Moreland Centre on Bean Hill, and we also work in lots of different areas that are covered by packages. And we try to see young people as quickly as we can. So some of the issues covered. I know that you can't read this, but fortunately I have to talk about this a lot, so hopefully I'll know. But basically the majority of the issues that young people come to see YIS with is anxiety and stress, depression and self-esteem, followed quite closely by anger. But we also see a lot of young people around family issues, school and academic issues, self-harm, trauma and abuse, and bullying. So it's a really wide, varied amount of reasons that we see young people. And we're a generic service, and that means that we'll see young people about anything. If they want counselling, we'll provide that for them. So they can come to talk to us about anything. And we're really good at what we'll do, but I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. But what we've seen that's been quite interesting for people in the mental health sector is that we've had a huge increase of the amount of professionals referring to us. Now that might be because there's less other services to refer to, or with the services just that used to be there don't exist. It could be that. It could be that awareness of YIS is growing. So there's a number of different things we'll never really know. But something that I do think is quite important to recognise is that when young people come for counselling, we ask them 10 questions at the beginning of each counselling session, and this will generate a score. And basically what we have seen is that our average score has gone up quite significantly, so it's gone up by 3 points, which seems quite small, but as an average that means that generally young people are presenting with more serious issues across the board. So it means that young people are feeling more, need more support with their mental health, and we are seeing a general increase over the years. Does that make sense? Great, thank you for the nods, everybody. We are doing our best to get to a kind of gender equality, parity, where we see the same amount of males and females. We do see quite a lot of people who don't identify as male and female, who identify as other, non-binary, trans. But we are, if you look at counselling services nationally, we do see a lot more men than, or boys or males than those services. So we are doing really well locally to provide support for men, but I think we need to definitely work on that. Something else that's quite interesting is people ask me a lot what age range access our service the most. And we tend to see a peak here at about 15 through to 17. So that's when the majority of young people will access our service. It's not true across the board, but it's just a really good indicator of a particular pressure point on local young people, and when, for whatever reason, that begins to spike. It could be because that's about the times when you've got GCSEs and A-levels, but there are other things. We've talked about hormones and other stuff, but it seems to be quite important. And then, just in terms of the effectiveness of our service, and we do see quite a lot of people from all sorts of different cultures, religions and education status, but something that's really important to us, and this has been around since the 1970s and 70s, we try to remain as user-friendly and person-centred as possible. So all of this, basically, we designed our service because it's what young people want, they tell us that they want, and we check that all the time. And I think that's reflected in how many young people felt that they've been understood, they've been heard, they've been able to move on, and that they 99% would recommend us to a friend. So it just gives you a bit of an indication that we have got a local council providing a really high quality counselling service locally, and it is making a big impact. So there is some doom and gloom, but there is also some hope. So I thought what I'd do, I don't know if you can read them, because I imagine that they're quite small. Sorry guys. But anyway, that was my last slide. Just some different comments that we get. I found it very easy to express myself. It relaxed me. I had 12 sessions. Very nice sessions, helped with a lot of issues. So again, all of this is on the website, so you can get a bit more information. But I wanted to kind of throw it out to the audience, see whether there is anything in particular, because I normally get a lot of questions. I know we've not had it so far, but please feel free to ask me and I'll try and answer the best that I can. Thought I'd an ask questions slide. Yeah?
Can a young person, if they want, come and see you as well as speaking to someone at school if they've got sessions at school, or is it best to just see you or the person in school?
So are they accessing counselling in school or just support?
Yeah.
So generally they say that you should access one kind of therapy at a time, but that's not always possible, or there might be kind of gaps. If you're seeing camps, there might be a gap before a waiting list before you go on to the next service, in which case this might be able to provide you with some mental health support while you wait. So the general rule is one therapy at a time, but young people, parents, guardians and professionals can refer to us. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. So young people can refer themselves directly if they feel that they need support alongside what's already happening for them. Is that all right? Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
How do you pick which reader?
That's a really good question. So generally that's why we use the core score. So what we do is when young people come to us, we do an intake assessment. So we'll sit down with them, a counsellor, a qualified counsellor or a qualified volunteer will sit with them and talk to them about their issues, what they're facing, and they'll go through the core score test. And the people that score, so the max score you can get is 40. People who score kind of 25 and above will try to do as soon as possible, and those buy packages or the more funding that we get, the more people we can see, and that helps us to see everybody more quickly. Thanks. Anything else? Any more? I will be hanging around after, so do come and grab me if you want to ask
There's
anything.
one more.
Oh, sorry. So our council issues a range of, they call it like models. So some of them might use CBT, but we have people who use all sorts of different things. So if you particularly don't like CBT, for instance, you could request a counsellor that doesn't use that modality, which basically means wave counselling. Waiting list. So we are currently, our waiting list, we've got a kind of to register your interest for counselling, and then we get to people as soon as we possibly can. It's just because of the huge amount of demand, we don't feel it's ethical to keep our waiting list open, because it basically makes it seem like you're kind of waiting for counselling. So what we do instead is people register their interest, as soon as we can offer them counselling, we contact them, and then we see them as quickly as we can. Waiting times. So we offer appointment times at all different times. We generally offer them on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 till 7, because we find that is the best time for young people. And like we said, we've done everything we can to listen to young people and to provide them with counselling at a time or place that suits them. Any other questions? No? Or you're coughing? Lovely. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Kat. I just want to, before we move on to, we're going to have someone come up and do a very short speech. Before I do, just two things I want to pick up from what Kat said. More referrals coming from professionals. We're seeing exactly the same thing in practice. I'm going to move this out of the way, this is what's humming. We're seeing more professionals in the local services referring into the practice. We had 2 from CAMS in the last couple of weeks asking us to work with children that had initially been referred into CAMS for therapy, and they're trying to refer to the practice MK. And my first question was, that's fine, we'll love to see them. Who's paying? And that's the sad part about a completely private practice, is that someone has to pay, and not everyone has the disposable income to pay. So that's why we try as hard as we can to link in with other non-profit services and charities, and to know what's going on in Milton Keynes, so that we can refer people who don't have the disposable income for private therapy, that we can signpost them to somewhere and not just say no and close the door. On the subject of CAMS, sort of children and adolescent mental health services, I rang them today because I knew I was coming in tonight, and I rang them this morning and I asked them just a very quick question: what are your waiting times at the moment? Because CAMS, it does fluctuate. We know when CAMS is having a bad quarter because our referrals go up. And she said 18 months for some of their pathways. It's not all of their pathways, because it very much depends on what the difficulties the young person is having. But for some of their more complex services, it is 18 months. Now, I put the phone down, I typed this up onto my speech that I'd never refer to. And then I called them back this afternoon whilst walking my beagle, because I was thinking about it all the way round Shenley Wood, and I was thinking, that can't be right, 18 months. So I rang them again and I said, look, I'm really sorry, I spoke to one of your colleagues this morning, and anyway, she said 18 weeks, and a second person, completely different to the first person I spoke to, said no, she said 18 months. CAMS do what they can. I know I've got practitioners who do work for the practice who have worked in similar CAMS up and down the country. They do their best. It is a funding issue, like most things. But in Milton Keynes, there's actually a lot going on, and the Mayor touched on this as well with his speech. The issue I find, and it comes from an autism perspective, so forgive me, I've done a lot of work with the local authority and the clinical commissioning group around the provision of autism services for people who can't afford to come and pay for it privately. And we've given them lots of useful help and sort of advice as to how they can integrate a service that can be offered locally, which I understand early next year is going to be launched, which is a very positive thing. There will be an integrated assessment and post-diagnostic service led by the local authority with joint funding between the clinical commissioning group and Milton Keynes Council. So that's something to really look forward to, because that is actually what is needed in Milton Keynes. Up until then, the practice has provided assessments for people aged 16 plus, and will continue to do so till around February time, and then it will be handed over to the local authority. But with all of my meetings with anyone in Milton Keynes, no matter where they're from, they always seem to miss a big point. There is a lot of people doing a lot of good things, but not everybody knows who they are. And what we really need to do, and I thought we almost cracked it at the beginning of last year when I went to it was a big workshop and there's lots of people there, and we all talked about the gaps in the service. And it wasn't just autism, it was other mental health pathways as well. And between 20, 30 people in that room, we all identified the gaps. What was working relatively well, what wasn't. And then we went away for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, to have another meeting about those gaps. And I thought, yes, we're going to start having some development, some progress with plugging those gaps. And then the person opened that meeting with, they're going to do a recruitment drive for a clinical psychologist, and this was their job description, to go and identify the gaps in the service. And I said, didn't we do that 6 weeks ago? So, like what the Mayor was saying earlier, you know, what we do need in Milton Keynes is your views. Tell us, tell Health Watch, there's other advocacy services that are around Milton Keynes. You know, you can even write to your local MP. We've got 2 of them in Milton Keynes. Hassle them, tell them what is not working, and find other people who are linked in to these people who do commission these services for us, who do deliver these services. Link in, find out where they are and who they are. This is just one evening where you've met a few new people who are, I suppose, linked into local pathways and charitable services and private practices. Talk to them, learn about what is going on in Milton Keynes, and have your say. Because the Clinical Commissioning Group in Milton Keynes is there to provide services for you. And if there's a gap, they need to know about it. So that's what I just wanted to say anyway. There's a lot more I could say, but you all want to go home, so I'm going to move on. Irmela's going to come up and read a closing speech by the person who contributed a hell of a lot to arranging this evening. Her name is Shannon. She's sat right there. Now, Shannon does not like to come up and do public speaking, and while I'm on that, public speaking is actually really nerve-wracking. You get people who can come up, and the Mayor is very eloquent, and I watched how he was speaking. I wish I could do that. I just rant off and go on a tangent about something that's nothing in my speech. But the speakers here tonight I thought were fantastic. They are not public speakers. They have come and shared some very personal experiences with you all. So I'd like to thank them personally because, well, I thought they were brilliant. But before we do the big round of applause, can we just get Irmela to come up and read a couple of bits that Shannon would like to say?
Hi, my name is Irmela and I'm reading this on behalf of Shannon. And then something that I've learned during the many years of my voluntary work within the mental health is that no one is above mental health illness touching their lives. Whether it be themselves, a family member, a friend, a colleague, or even a neighbour. Mental health is in no way selective of its rest place, namely the brain and body. The one thing that is definite about mental health illnesses is that very definitely do not show up in a blood test or an X-ray, if only that were possible. Therefore, so many of those who sadly suffer from this debilitating and very often lonely illness go unnoticed and are not listened to until all too often it's rather too late. For many, many years, mental health in young people and adults has sadly been pushed to the back of the queue and at times just almost forgotten, leaving events like this and the type of awareness work that I and my esteemed team do to bring together like-minded people in a bid to spread preventative awareness and forge ahead in bringing a community together to fight the stigma of mental health and to get better and quicker care for sufferers and their families. And in addition to try and ensure that sufferers of any age can integrate and be part of a non-judgmental and kind community. Mental health wears many different hats, which can be confusing nonetheless, whatever its outfit. It often has the wearer feeling sad, lonely, scared, and frequently much more. It only takes a very short time to share a chat with someone or take an interest in something that that person is doing. Either one of the four could give that person the will to try and turn that very difficult corner or feel wanted and useful again. Please be aware, everyone, that the roads in the mental illness map are often very hilly, twisty, remote, and scarily long for those who are travelling along them. So please offer to share the ride. It's always shorter and easier when one has someone to talk to along the way. There is a motto whereby I live my life, and I would ask that each of you from today try and do the same. Always be kind. Never judge until you have all the facts. One never knows what is going on in another person's life or what difficulty they may be dealing with, albeit current or otherwise. This may even apply to the very person sitting next to you right now. Always try to share what you have with someone who has less or may have fallen upon hard times. Take the time to sit and talk to someone who you can see is struggling, even though it may be someone who you would not normally interact with. Those 3 gestures just mentioned cost nothing financial, just a little of one's time, and the rewards from these deeds will enrich your life and that of the person who is receiving your kind token. All too often, day-to-day situations are a large contributor of people's mental illness, and although sadly many of us are never totally free of mental illness, we can still lead a happy, interactive and interesting lives, and that in itself will do more than most medicines ever can. So in closing, I'd like to again sum up. Always try to remember, be kind and please don't judge. Also, don't always be fooled by the happy, bubbly exterior some proffer. You could be that person crying out silently. Talk to someone new as often as you can. By doing this, you could be saving a life, and you may just make a friend. Please don't think about it, just do it, and you will be warmly rewarded, and so will the person you talk to or spend time with. Most of all, for those of you who are suffering and those who are caring for sufferers, never give up hope. Keep on talking. Someone will listen. Thank you for sharing this evening with us, and I hope that you found it helpful and thought-provoking, and have a safe journey home.
So we're nearly at the, just put your coat down, we're not finished yet. So I'm just going to finish up by asking Shannon wants to stand up and think, well, I think not say anything because she doesn't like public speaking, but if I can invite Shannon up to give a little presentation, it would be awesome. Surprise to me, I'm winging this bit now.
Ruth, could you come on? I'd like everybody to do the round of applause. And could I have my volunteers, please, at the end of each row, and all the cards that you were asked to fill in, could you just pass them along? And that's my public speaking for tonight. Thank you very much.
Michael, I'm really glad you've given me the opportunity to talk to you tonight. We think that Milton Keynes is a marvellous, incredible city, and it is. I wouldn't resile from that for a moment. But we've also got to face up to the challenges of being a city. And one of the things that can happen is that people who need our help at any particular time just get lost in our wider society. And that's what really worries me about mental health, that we don't realise the prevalence of it. We don't talk about it very much. We let people just get on with it, and we need to do much, much more. We need to remove the stigma about mental health. We need to equate the provision of mental health services with those that already exist for physical health. We need to persuade people to talk quite openly about their anxiety, their stress, their depression. And when we do that, we'll be stronger as a city because we won't have pushed it under the carpet. We must never become a two-speed city where able, talented people get on and other people who've got problems just get left behind. We must never do that in Milton Keynes.